Hello, in this video, I'm going to go over uh, the upcoming changes that are being worked on the PTS right now for update 50. And this is going to be a preview. Now, before we get really deep in the weeds in this, please be advised that we are in week 1 of the PTS right now, and they could implement a lot of changes from now until when it goes live in the game. So just keep that in mind. If I happen to say something that doesn't exist in the game when it goes out, that's why. I'm currently speaking about something that is going in week 1 of the PTS. So these numbers could change. However, because they are looking at implementing something like this, um, it's a good chance that there will be at least somewhat of this state of what we're going to talk about in the game when it does launch. So just always keep that in mind. These things could change during the PTS based on feedback or based on what they decide once it's been tested. So before I start, I'm just going to thank everybody for clicking on the video and watching. I really appreciate all the likes and the subscriptions that I'm getting. I'm really trying to put out a lot of content that is helpful and unique and different from what other content creators do. So thank you very much for giving my channel a chance. I really appreciate it. So first off, I'm going to start off with something that the developers are focusing on, and that is buffing what they are calling mono classes, meaning characters that do not take part in subclassing. So you are going to, for example, get on a Dragonknight or a Templar or an Arcanist, and you are not going to choose any other skill lines outside of that. You're just going to keep a pure class. They are creating something that is called class mastery passives, um, and that is going to buff your character. They are currently creating several different ones for uh, each class that you can have options for. If you keep your pure class intact, you can pick up to, I believe it's 2 of them. They have unique skill. They're not really standard skill points, but they are basically points that you get access to if you retain your pure class status. Then you can implement points into these class masteries to essentially bridge the gap that subclassing has created in terms of having super powerful builds in all roles. So I'm going to go over what this could possibly mean for the following classes on the screen here: the Dragonknight, the Templar, and the Arcanist. So just for anybody that doesn't know, update 50 is going to be season 1's update basically, and that is going to launch on July 8th of 2026. That's a typo there. It's 2026, not 2025. Um, and we are currently in season 0, and that is being season 1 is being tested on the PTS. So if you don't know, they always put out a sample basically of what the update is going to be so that people can test it online. On PC, you can go onto their website and access their uh, testing server basically. So let's get into the next slide here. So what is changing? I think the pure class is an opportunity to implement support DPS into trials groups that are dedicated into the Templar and Dragonknight roles. And why I believe that is because of the class masteries that they are providing. I have previously done videos on my channel about support DPS implementing War Machine with Zen's Redress, and another one wearing the Way of Martial Knowledge. I think these two setups will be absolutely uh, a difference maker in trials teams, because you're going to be able to massively buff the damage of your other DPS that could still, quite frankly, take advantage of subclassing, and you could implement even more damage buffs easier. And so I'm going to go over that. So as I said, the mono class basically is a pure class, no subclassing allowed. The Dragonknight and the Templar are gaining passives that can deliver group-wide buffs that cannot be provided in any other way. So I believe the support role is really, really fitting for these classes if you're going to stay in a pure class environment, and they can buff the group incredibly well. So we're going to go to the next tab here. We're going to talk about the Dragonknight first. Dragonknight is really good at holding the Zen Redress gear set and buffing the group as it did previous to when subclassing implemented. That was usually the class of choice to run the Zen's Redress, and I think it is a really good time to bring back around the pure class Dragonknight for a support DPS role. And the reason why is you are now going to be able to acquire a massive buff that is called Lead from the Front. That is one of the class masteries that the Dragonknight is getting. And what it does is when you cast your ultimate, you get to provide major protection and major berserk for your entire group as long as they're within 28 meters for 15 seconds, or excuse me, for 1 second for every 15 ultimate that you spend. So that means if you have a Dragonknight that is casting their ultimate at 500, they're going to be able to give their entire group major berserk and major protection for 33 seconds. That is an incredibly long buff. Now, in addition to this, the Dragonknight recently got a rework where they redid the skills basically. It was a makeover for the Dragonknight, and they have changed how the standard of might works. Everyone that stands inside of the standard of might gets 300 and weapon and spell damage, and also gets a 10% damage reduction. So, and the caster gets an extra 300 weapon and spell damage and 15% damage reduction taken. So, this does not stack, so you can only have one DK per group. So, why that's important to bring up is if you have a Dragonknight tank that is subclassed, they probably aren't going to have Ardent Flame. So, this is going to be a unique way to have this in group. Uh, Most of the time, I think people lean towards having a subclassed Arcanist beam DPS. So this would be the one standard of might in your group. So essentially, if you look at the full buff package here, if you spend 500 ultimate with War Machine on, in addition to using the Lead from the Front class mastery passive, and you cast it on the standard of might while using Zen's Redress. And in addition to this, you can use Magma Fist as the spammable on the support role. Then you can buff your team with Major Slayer and Major Berserk. Those two buff are named buffs, but they are different and they stack. And those are each 10% increases. The nearest 5 DPS, so you want to stack all your DPS on this person when they call a Slayer Bomb, essentially. And you can increase your damage to those 5 DPS by 20% standard damage for 33 seconds. And then the War Machine Major Slayer buff would continue on for an additional 17 seconds. The entire group would also get the 300 weapon and spell damage from Standard of Might, which I believe lasts for 15 seconds. And then with the Zen's Redress buff of 5% increased damage, as well as the Magma Fist damage buff. So as you can see, this can grant a lot of unique damage buffs in group with this type of implementation. Now, why Zen's Redress and what is Magma Fist? If you don't know, Zen's Redress comes from the lair of Marsalok Dungeon. It applies a touch of Zen debuff. All you have to do is light attack the enemy one time, every 20 seconds. And for every sticky dot of damage over time that you stick on the enemy, they take an increase of 1% damage up to a maximum of 5% from your group. And that is a unique debuff. And the DK is really well suited for this because they have several sticky dots, such as the Searing Claw, Disintegrating Dragon Fire, Burning Talons, and Shatter Spike Mantle, in addition to some other Zen dots that can be applied, such as Barbed Trap is another one. Also, if Burning status effect applies to them, then that would also be a Zen dot as well. Uh, Maintaining 5 stacks is easy with a DK, and it is a natural Zen carrier. So also the Magma Heat, or excuse me, the Magma Fist is the Earthen Heart spammable that applies a heat stack on the on each cast, increasing the damage taken by 66 per stack, up to 3 stacks. At maximum stacks, this is roughly a 4% group damage increase on the target, and the DK can apply this automatically just by using their main spammable. And with the Dragonknight rework, these stacks are easier to sustain because they extended how long they remain on the target. So to summarize this, as you can see, that's a lot of buffs that you can put from one member. Now, granted, this person is not going to be doing as high of damage as a full DPS, but if you give all of these buffs to 6 full damage subclassed uh, Arcanists, this is going to really, really empower your group. Some of these buffs, for example, are not present on the trial dummy. For example, um, the 300 weapon and spell damage that you get from Standard of Might, the Zen's Redress buff, and the stagger buff from Magma Fist are not present on the dummy. So keep that in mind. Those can be increasing what you would normally parse on a trial dummy. So next we're going to talk about the Templar, the Bright Harbinger class mastery is upgrading the Illuminate passive to also grant your group 300 weapon and spell damage, in addition to the 10% damage buff that Illuminate already grants. So if you have a Dragonknight in group that is granting minor brutality, then Illuminate in and of itself is not really going to do anything. However, if you don't have a Dragonknight in group that is providing minor brutality, then this is even more vital. So depending on your group composition, the minor sorcery could be useful or it couldn't. You're just going to have to make that determination. But it is nice to be able to have a pure class uh, be able to give a unique 300 weapon and spell damage. And I thought this was a good fit to talk about uh, implementing with a similar setup, having the Slayer bomb come from this character wearing martial knowledge, which is another unique buff. And so the Templar also has some ultimate regeneration passives that you can implement. Um, and so there is a lot of possibilities implementing this as well. Just before I go too far, I probably will be doing a second and third video on these build setups. So if that's a thing that interests you, make sure you are subscribed and you have your notification bell on. I likely will not do those videos until update 50 is live in the game so that I can show the class masteries in place and talk about the complete build. I don't really want to do those videos before those are live because then it'll just kind of be not complete. But I did want to talk about this stuff because you may need to, for example, get a Templar leveled or a Dragonknight leveled if you don't have that already. or if you don't have some of the gear sets that I'm talking about, then you may need to go farm those as well if you're wanting to implement this in your roster some way. So I just wanted to kind of do this ahead of time in case this is something you want to consider. You have time to go kind of get that in place before it goes live. So these two support DPS are basically going to, in theory, buff a crew of 6 full damage subclass DPS that have an Arcanist base. And why I'm talking about that is because another thing they are doing in this update 50 is they are reworking some of the class specific sets that come from the Infinite Archive, and they are buffing the damage that they do. So as you can see on the screen here, Spattering Disjunction is the Arcanist class set that only the Arcanist base can wear. So in order to implement this into your build, you would have to be an Arcanist base. So if you don't have an Arcanist DPS and that's something that you're interested in, you might want to look at adding that to your roster if you can. Keep an eye out when character slots go on sale. That does happen sometimes. Um, or you may be able to get somebody in game to purchase one for you for gold if you find a crown seller. Uh, I would recommend trying to do that within your guild, though, not outside of it. But back to the update here with the Spattering Disjunction gear set. As you can see in its current state in update 49, when you deal damage with an Arcanist ability, it applies 2 random status effects every 7 seconds. So if you are doing this, there's a cooldown of a half second, and then you can reapply after that. Essentially, if you're on a beam build, this is going to happen almost constantly. So the update that they are doing to this set is, as you can see, they're increasing the damage done with status effects by 40% while you wear this, and it also generates a crux. Now, they have not implemented this second part that I'm going to talk about, but something that they changed with the class mastery script for scribing, excuse me, they took away the ability for the class mastery to just generate a crux whenever. As you can see, they don't have any verbiage here about it if you don't have a crux already. So that is a really important thing to notice and pay attention to. This could reinstate the fact that you could generate crux when it doesn't say when or how often this happens. So maybe we'll get some more detail. Again, I want to reiterate, this could change from week 1 of the PTS to when it goes live. So if this is different when it comes out, that's the reason why. But the increase to damage of status effects is really important to focus on here. The Arcanist Herald of the Tome skill line already has a passive that is called the Psychic Lesion passive that increases damage done with status effects themselves already. So if you're going to increase the damage another 40%, that is a lot of damage, especially if you're applying them 2 at a time every 7 seconds. That's a long time. That's a lot of extra damage that you can implement into your build. So then, what sets do you run with this Spattering Disjunction? Well, there's a lot of reworks being done with damage done to monsters, where they are basically reducing the effectiveness of the buff that you get when you stack into that category too much. For example, Onsul's Torment, as well as Tideborn Wildstalker, the craftable set, both give buffs to damage done to monsters, and those are not going to be as potent once update 50 goes live. So I'm bringing this up because there are options that you can step into to kind of create a new build also maybe not be hurt as much for that nerf. So for ad pulls, the replacement of Onsul, in my opinion, you need to go farm the Kind's Aegis trial and run the Yandir's Might uh, trial set. That is a really, really good set. It basically gives you weapon damage whenever you critically strike, and this can be even bigger if you heavy attack once you have full stacks. But even if you don't use the heavy attack implementation, the damage that you get from that set is really, really strong anyway. So if you're not familiar with that set, I have done a video on it before, and I would recommend, if you are interested, go to my set overviews playlist on my channel, and you can check that out, as I have covered that as well. The other one that is tried and true that I don't believe is going to change much is the Slivers of Null Arca from Lucent Citadel. This is not being affected by the damage done, and it is more recommended for boss fights because it is a single target uh, set that you can use to absolutely drill bosses with. Now I'm going to bring up the mythic that they are implementing into the game that is actually going to be obtainable before update 50. The leads that are going to drop are going to be in the night market, and the night market will launch at the end of April. So keep an eye on that. I believe the exact date is, I believe, the 28th, maybe the 29th of April. I don't remember offhand. But that is when the night market launches, the new mythic will be, you'll be able to farm the leads for this, and it is called the Shattered Paths Signet. Now, what this does is for every ultimate that you have, your damage done with status effects can go up to increase of 170. Now, you will have uh, the debuff applied to you called Minor Timidity that eats your ultimate. So you're going to make sure that you absolutely have your light attacks hitting every 9 seconds to keep your ultimate generation up, as well as possibly ensuring that you have at least, I believe, if you have a good uptime of minor heroism in your group, that will cancel out the minor timidity in on the debuff that applies to this. So it would be a really good idea to implement that in your group. Have somebody provide minor heroism. The other thing that this mythic applies is when you reach 170 ultimate, your light attacks and your heavy attacks now will apply a random status effect. And it conceptually pairs really well with Spattering Disjunction because that is also going to be applying 2 status effects in addition to buffing the damage by 40%. So that's an amount of 210% increase to status effects. So that could be a really large jump in damage. Now, as I'm talking about this, this mythic is not out yet, so I cannot confirm what kind of damage this is going to do. It may or may not be a good idea to jump off of the Velothi mythic. Just wanted to say that up front. Um, the Velothi mythic has a lot of benefits to it. For example, the penetration that it provides, as well as the minor force buff being up 100%. So if you do jump from this mythic here to, or excuse me, from the Velothi mythic to this mythic, you may want to make sure that those two things are handled. You may have to go with front bar maces or something like that to make sure that your penetration is on point. Who knows? I just talking about rough things to think about, changes that are coming in update 50, and I thought I would make a kind of a presentation on that. So if you're not familiar with the gear sets that I've referenced in this video, uh, and you may need to go farm this. I'm going to cover every single one of them here. War Machine comes from the trial Halls of Fabrication that is geographically located in Vardenfell. You do not have to run that trial on veteran because there is absolutely no perfected gear for that. So don't worry about that. That is a fairly easy trial to run on normal. Uh, so if you don't have this set farmed out, I would recommend if you do obtain the set and you wanting to run it on a support DPS, just run it on the armor. That way that major slayer buff is active at all times, and that does keep your support DPS obtaining the minor slayer buff that it has. So keep that in mind. The dungeon set, Zen's Redress, as I said earlier, comes from Lair of Marsalok. That dungeon is located in, I believe it's Grotwood. I'm not on the game right now. It's either Grotwood or Greenshade, one of the two, geographically. But again, you can farm that dungeon on normal. It is kind of a long dungeon, but I will make one recommendation if you are trying to farm the gear set. If you have a competent enough team to run the dungeon on veteran, I would recommend doing that because that does increase the value of your chests. You're probably not, I don't think you can get a simple chest in vet, and so have a better chance of actually getting a gear piece in veteran than you do just running it on normal. If you have all the armor pieces and you run a dungeon on normal, basically you're only going to get one pull from the final boss. Uh, Maybe a chance drop from a dungeon chest. However, if you run it on veteran, the chances of getting a gear piece out of a veteran chest are higher because you're going to have a higher chance of getting an intermediate and advanced or a master chest in those environments. Uh, Not out of the question to get one of those in normal dungeon runs, but the chances are a lot higher in veteran to get better chest. So I will say that. Overland. This way of martial knowledge, this comes from Craglorn. Again, you can buy this on traders if you need to, um, or you can just go farm dailies or overland areas such as delves, uh, public dungeons, and all of that. So that would be where you need to go farm that set if you don't have it and you can't find the piece you need on traders for a decent price. That's where you need to get that. Spalder of Ruin. I'm going to talk about this briefly. I mentioned it previously in the video, but this is something I like to implement on these support DPS roles to just further buff damage in group um, without having to drain one of your tanks running this mythic or your healers. It's not a must. It's just kind of a test it out, see if it works for your group, if you like it. 260 weapon and spell damage that gets sent to 6 players is a unique 260 weapon and spell damage. The only caveat to that is the person that's wearing this, their sustain gets a little bit of a pain, so you might want to make sure that you're on a build that can actually handle that. Um, but for example, the Dragonknight does have some sustain assistance when they proc the ultimate, so keep that in mind. Um, okay, so the next 2 sets come from trials. If you're wanting the perfected versions of these, you do need to run the trial on veteran in order to get those. So Yandir's Might comes from Kyne's Aegis. This is the trial that is located in Western Skyrim, and that is a fairly easy trial if you get in a coordinated group for veteran. Even if you don't have veteran, you can run the normal trial gear and that will still perform pretty well. You just lose out on the one line of perfected, which I believe is 129 weapon and spell damage, if memory serves me. So keep that in mind. A same instance here for the next set, which is the Slivers of Null Arca. If you don't have the perfected version, you only lose out on the one line from the perfected gear set, but you still obtain the ability to fire off that sliver shot with the normal set. So if that's only something that you can obtain with your group, then get the normal version for sure, and that will still perform really well. And you can work on stepping into the veteran area and obtaining those. I would recommend that you get the body pieces for these so that they are active at all times, so that you don't have an issue where you bar swap and you're critting with you're critically striking with slivers of null arca, and you're not gaining a stack of sliver. So that's important to keep in mind. I would make sure that you have these uh, on the jewelry and the body pieces. So keep that in mind. You probably don't want to wear this on the weapons so that you bar swap and lose the buff from it. So what should you do before update 50 if you've not done it? Level your Dragonknight and your Templar, and for that matter, your Arcanist if you have not done it. Also, while you're doing those, skills are important. Dual wield, destruction, staff, and two-handed skill lines on all of those. If you have a question as to how to power level something, check out my YouTube channel. I've done videos on how you can power level stuff really easily. I've got a lot of helpful information on there for guides on all of that. Secondly, start farming your gear sets. As I said, War Machine from Halls of Fabrication, as well as Zen's Redress from the dungeon layer of Marsalok. And then if you don't have the Spalder of Ruin and you're interested in running that, check out how you get those leads and go farm that as well so that you can implement all this gear when update 50 drops, and you can take advantage of all of that. So, and as I said previously, farm your Arcanist, get them up to CP level. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, if you don't have the Spattering Disjunction set from the Infinite Archive, that takes a while to obtain. So if you haven't seen my video on how to farm Infinite Archive, check that out. That is located on my website, or excuse me, my YouTube video playlists as well. I have a good guide on how to obtain that fairly quickly. So take a look at my YouTube channel. If any of this interests you, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. Make sure you got your notification bell on so when I post new videos, you can get an alert as to when that happens. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it very much, and have a great day. I'll see you in another video. Bye.